What was the skin color of Cleopatra and the kings and queens of ancient Egypt? Were they white, Arab, or black? In this video, I will attempt to answer some difficult questions by sharing the scientific work and research of Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop. Dr. Diop was a specialist in nuclear physics as well as a renowned historian and anthropologist. The questions he raised about cultural bias in scientific research played a significant role in the post-colonial shift in the study of African civilizations. His work includes books such as Civilization or Barbarism and The African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality. The latter was published in 1974, in which Dr. Diop argued that ancient Egypt was a black civilization and that the Egyptians were the ancestors of modern Africans. Although his work was controversial at the time, modern scientific research has since vindicated it. Recently, DNA studies have confirmed that ancient Egyptians were indeed black Africans. The authors supported their argument with a variety of evidence. In 1974, Drs. Diop and Obenga organized a conference in Cairo, Egypt. They invited scientists from all over the world and UNESCO to discuss one key question: what was the race of the elite of ancient Egypt? At the end of this conference, UNESCO made the following statement: Dr. Diop and Dr. Obenga have highlighted in the eyes of almost all the participants the insufficiency of the methodological requirements used until now in Egyptological research. They have brought to light examples of new methodology which would allow the study of the question proposed for the attention of the colloquium to progress in a more scientific manner. Here is an image demonstrating the scientific rigor of the researcher discovering ancient Egypt. The image shows 7 archaeologists having dinner in the tomb of Pharaoh Ramses XI in 1923. Ramses XI reigned from 1107 BC to 1078 BC and was the 10th and final pharaoh of the 20th dynasty of Egypt. All Ramses of Egypt history probably looked like the 2 dark-skinned servants in the background. So, the 1974 Cairo Conference was a turning point in African historiography. It marked the moment when Africa was recognized as an essential part of world history. However, it is 2023, and this recognition is still not realized in practice. To understand the rest of this video, we have to get our timeline correct. Here's the timeline of the ancient Egypt civilizations Dr. Diop uses in his book. Here's where it all started. Here's where his Ramses XI ruled. Here's where Cleopatra was ruling. Dr. Diop shared a lot of evidence in his books, and I will share some of the most interesting ones with you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Let's get started. I am a big believer in science and love the idea of rigorous research. If you're anything like me, I'm sure you would appreciate the following information from research done on the skin color of ancient Egyptians. Let's start with that. In 2012 study by geneticists at the University of Copenhagen, this study analyzed the DNA of 150 ancient Egyptian mummies from different time periods. Keep in mind that in ancient Egypt, only the pharaohs, members of the nobility, and officials were mummified. The researchers found that the mummies had a wide range of genetic variation, but that they all shared a common ancestry with modern-day sub-Saharan Africans. In 2017 study by geneticists at the University of Tübingen, this study analyzed the DNA of 18 ancient Egyptian mummies from the New Kingdom period, 1550 to 1070 BC. The researchers found that the mummies had a high degree of genetic similarity to modern-day Ethiopians and Sudanese. Remember our friend Ramses XI? He was in power during this time period. As I hinted earlier, with DNA evidence, we now know that he probably looked like the servants in that picture. Last, in a 2018 study by geneticists at the University of York, the study analyzed the DNA of 44 ancient Egyptian mummies from different time periods. The researchers found again that the mummies had a wide range of genetic variation, but that they all shared a common ancestry with modern-day sub-Saharan Africans. With that out of the way, let's get back to Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop. Dr. Diop regarded this as a fundamental issue in helping Africans take their rightful place in the history of humanity. As you may be aware, ancient Egypt was one of the most important civilizations in history. It was a major center of learning and culture and made vast contributions to the world. It pioneered fields such as mathematics, astronomy, medicine, art, writing, and more. But the idea of Egyptians being black is not what I learned in school. And I'm pretty sure that if you're watching this video, you were taught the same. From a very young age, we were told that the civilization of ancient Egypt was mostly white. Just look at the scenes from a movie on Cleopatra in 1963. As we progress through this video, hopefully it will become clearer why we were told this convenient lie. Admitting that the civilization of ancient Egypt had been built by Black Africans would mean recognizing that the peoples colonized by powers like France and England were civilized, and that the notion of a civilizing mission was unfounded. The discovery of mummies coincided with the colonization of Africa. For example, F. Kallio discovered the ruins of Meroe in 1821, and E. Amelinao discovered the tomb of Osiris in 1898. The relationship between Europe and Africa changed dramatically during this time. As Europe was colonizing Africa, it was in their best interest to have scientific arguments to support their moral justification for the civilizing mission mentioned earlier. People like G.W.F. Hegel, a German philosopher, were really famous for sentences like this when describing African history: an undeveloped ahistorical world, entirely imprisoned by the natural mind and whose place is still at the threshold of universal history. Their theses on the prejudices according to which, more related to the apes than to the man, the blacks, had a pre-logical mentality and had not been able to build a civilization as significant. Contrary to what people like Hegel want you to believe, there is evidence supporting the idea that ancient Egyptians had an African origin. Specifically, they descended from the indigenous people of the Nile Valley region. Ancient Greek historian Herodotus referred to the Egyptians as having black skin and curly hair, leading some scholars to argue that they were of African origin. Men who share the point of view of G.W.F. Hegel have a hard time accepting that ancient Egypt had a great influence on ancient Greece and Rome. However, the Greek historian Strabo wrote that Plato traveled to Egypt and studied with Egyptian priests. The Roman philosopher Cicero also wrote that Plato traveled to Egypt and learned about Egyptian religion and philosophy. Egypt allowed the best Greek scientists and intellectuals to come and learn there. Sometimes these men, like Plato, had to endure a long process before gaining access to the knowledge of ancient Egypt. Here are some of the students of Black Egypt. Thales of Miletus, 624-546 BC. Thales was a pre-Socratic philosopher and mathematician who is considered to be the first Greek scientist. He is credited with discovering that the Earth is round and that the sun is larger than the moon. Thales also made significant contributions to the fields of geometry and astronomy. He is said to have spent 20 years studying in Egypt. Eratosthenes, 276-195 BC. Eratosthenes was a mathematician, astronomer, and geographer who is best known for calculating the circumference of the Earth. He also invented the first known map of the world. Eratosthenes is said to have spent 25 years studying in Egypt. Ptolemy was a mathematician, astronomer, and geographer who is best known for his work on the Almagest, a treatise on astronomy that was the standard work on the subject for over 1,000 years. Pythagoras, c. 570-495 BC, was a Greek philosopher and mathematician who is considered to be one of the most important figures in the history of Western thought. He is best known for his theorem on right triangles, but he also made significant contributions to the fields of mathematics, astronomy, and music. Pythagoras was born on the island of Samos in Greece. He traveled to Egypt as a young man to study mathematics and philosophy. He is said to have spent 20 years studying in Egypt, and he was greatly influenced by the ancient Egyptian culture. It should become clear why building a narrative of white Egypt was the only solution found by colonial powers such as France and Great Britain. They hoped it would promote the idea that Africans did not participate in history and were not worth it. A black teacher helping Pythagoras understand math, another black teacher helping Plato understand the human brain, and others assisting Ptolemy with his study of astronomy. These are powerful images that are not aligned with the objective of colonization. In today's world, these images are still not accepted. Just look at the vivid reaction people have had to the latest Netflix show. Accepting that the knowledge of Black Africans helped build Greek and Roman societies can be difficult for some people. but regardless of how they feel, it is simply the truth. Fortunately, Cheikh Anta Diop was one of the first researchers to challenge the status quo and push forward his research to demystify African history. Decades after his death, he was proven right and should be remembered as an objective scientist. As I mentioned earlier, in 1974, he confronted top scientists in the field of archaeology and history with his discovery. He created a conference where he presented valuable evidence to support his claim that the origin of ancient Egypt is based in Black Africa. We can still see evidence of this in our culture and language. Now let me share his discovery and link it back to the first question. What was the skin color of Cleopatra in ancient Egypt? First, here are some references. A photograph of a black man from 1946, as well as some statues of black men from the If and Benin tribes in Nigeria. Now take a look at the feature on this image, the proto-historical figure of Lord Terra Neder. This is the founder of Egypt. If you look at the mouth and the nose, it is clear that this is a black man. The haircut hasn't changed over the years, and Egyptian culture is still visible today throughout Africa. Egyptian women. Take a look at the haircut these women have. Does it look familiar? Egyptian princess and 3 Senegalese girls. The hairstyles of the princess upper left and the 3 post-pubescent girls. The Pule type, Ramses Jr. as a boy. Note the typical braid worn by prepubescent noble children and compare it to that of black Africans. In the image of the Hebrews in Egypt, the first 2 individuals on the right are black, and they are Egyptians. Those who follow are Hebrews bringing offerings. The difference between the 2 communities at this time is clearly visible. However, in reproductions in textbooks, the 2 black Egyptians are often omitted. On top of all of these evidences, Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop believed that Egyptian culture had a profound influence on the development of African languages, religion, and social organization. Most of the scientists invited to the 1974 conference agreed with the evidence presented. There is no doubt that ancient Egypt was of Black African origin, and its influence can still be seen in Africa today. This influence is not only visible, but also audible. Dr. Diop has demonstrated that there are similarities between certain African languages and ancient Egyptian, particularly in terms of their grammatical structures. For instance, ancient Egyptian, like many African languages, employed classifiers or noun classes that played a crucial role in word and sentence formation. Furthermore, African languages and ancient Egyptian both utilize gradation or tone to express nuances of meaning and distinguish between words. For religion, the Yoruba people of Nigeria have been identified as sharing similarities with the ancient Egyptian religion, particularly in their worship of nature gods and goddesses, and their belief in ancestor veneration. Ancient Egypt's influence can be observed in diverse African cultures, spanning from the Horn of Africa to the West African coast. So, was Cleopatra black? Yes, she was. There is a lot of evidence supporting this claim, including the physical features of ancient Egyptian artifacts, the writings of ancient Egyptian authors, and the DNA of ancient Egyptians. It is important to remember that science and evidence should always guide our understanding of the past. We should not allow our biases or prejudices to cloud our judgment. It is time for Africans like you and me to take our rightful place in the history of humanity. Cleopatra, a powerful and influential leader, made significant contributions to the world. Despite her race, which should not define her, she should be remembered for her accomplishments. It is worth noting that she was indeed black. That will be it for today's video. Let's work together to create a more just and equitable world, where everyone is respected and valued regardless of their race or ethnicity. I hope you now appreciate the deep impact that Africa has had and continues to have in the world. I'll leave you with the words of someone who said it best. Thank you for watching.
C'est un relevé d'un savant allemand qui s'appelle Lepsius. Et vous ne l'avez jamais vu reproduit dans un autre ouvrage avant cette projection. Vous voyez donc, c'est de cette manière que la science, n'est-ce pas, s'est écartée petit à petit de la réalité et de la vérité historique en ce qui concerne l'Égypte.
How did ancient writers describe the ancient Egyptians?
Tous les écrivains grecs et même romains de l'Antiquité ont déposé dans le même sens pour nous affirmer que les anciens Égyptiens de leur époque, pourtant qui étaient déjà très métissés, étaient des Noirs. Or, cette Égypte-là, c'est l'Égypte de la fin. Donc, de la fin de l'histoire égyptienne de Jésus-Christ, ça fait donc une période de 900 ans. Donc, les Égyptiens sont considérés comme des Noirs depuis l'origine jusqu'à la fin de leur histoire.
So, they would be considered black from their origins, from their beginnings, all the way to the end of their civilization, as is indicated by the first king, the slide which we saw.